Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Roundtable Show. It's episode 558. It's our first roundtable in the new year. I would like to wish listeners and viewers Happy New Year. We survived 2020 together, listeners and viewers. That's a miracle as it is. We've got some fantastic stories, got a great panel, got a great returning guest, got Brian Gardner, the former joint founder of Studio Press, and many other things. And it should be a great discussion. I'm going to let the panel quickly let themselves introduce themselves. Let's start off with our guest, Brian. Brian, would you like to quickly introduce yourself?
Yes. Hey, everybody. Brian Gardner, founder of Studio Press, co-partner in Copyblogger Media, previous partner, and current new founder and CEO of Agent Engine.
Fantastic. Got my friend John Locke. John, would you like to introduce yourself?
John from lockdownseo.com.
Got my friend Chris. Chris, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Chris from Lifter LMS. We help course creators create, launch, and scale. Also have a podcast called LMS Cast.
I've got my friend Spencer. Spencer, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, it's Spence from launchflows.com.
I've got my friend Heather. Heather, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm the digital solutions lead at The Difference Consulting and author of Birth of a Unicorn.
Which I read, and you should all read if you haven't.
All right, great. And I've got my friend Sally. Sally, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Sally Getch, organizer of the East Bay WordPress meetup in Oakland, California, and the WP fangirl, and dead curious to know what an Agent Engine is.
All right. Well, you need to go to another podcast. It's called The Mel Wright Show. You put it on iTunes. And about 3 weeks ago, Brian joined us on that, and you'll be able to learn all about it, Sally. So,
all right.
Yeah, it's got a certain host that look a bit iffy, but he's okay. Before we go into the stories of the week, I want to talk about one of our great sponsors. That's Kinster Hosting. If you're a developer or if you're a website owner looking for a great hosting company and looking for great performance and support, I suggest that you go over to Kinster. They have all the bells and whistles. They have all the technology that you're looking for. They've been hosting and supporting the WP-Tonic site for the past 3 years. They've just been a great sponsor and a great company to work with. So go over there, have a look at their packages, and I suggest that you should buy one. And if you do that, please tell them that you heard about them on the WP-Tonic podcast. That really helps the show. So let's go into story one. WordPress.com rattles freelancer community with new website building service launch. So Brian, what did you think of this one?
Funny, almost every other WP Tavern article I see now pop up makes me immediately think of that Michael Jackson animated GIF where he's sitting in there eating popcorn. Like, here comes another one. It's like the daily WP drama conversation. Where conspiracy theories are baked and all of these things. It just kind of reminds me, first and foremost, of just how far removed I feel like, because back in the day, years ago, when some of the original stuff was going down with Thesis and Headway and, some of that original WP drama, you just realize how old I'm getting. We were joking shortly beforehand about eyesights and visions and hairs. And I'm like, man, I just feel like such a grandpa now in the industry. I just don't have time to really, I observe, but I don't participate in those conversations. Very interesting conversation. It seems like most of these articles that pop up and in the comment sections, I really can see both sides of it, right? I think a lot of the newer agencies, the ones that feel a little more prone to sort of take over, immediately jump up and say, oh my gosh, they're going to steal my business.
Brian, it's nice to be part, if you're allowed to comment on the story. I commented, but my actual comment was removed, actually, Brian.
Really?
Yes, it was.
Shut him down.
Mr. Tavistock didn't appreciate my reasoned arguments. So there we go. You can't please everybody, can you, Brian?
Well, you need your own YouTube channel like Matt Medeiros does. He speaks freely about what you think about it all.
Yeah, obviously, Mr. Tavistock was told that told that my views weren't appreciated. So there we go. John, so what do you think?
I mean, I think it's interesting a move, but I don't even understand like why they're doing this, or this price point is just weird. I mean, there's a comment in here that said this makes about as much sense as Home Depot trying to build
Yeah, I saw that one. I like that. I like
for
that
customers. You know, it's just a race. There's no upside to this move. I don't think that they're going to get a lot of orders for Automatic to build, you know, a $4,900 website, because for one, who's building this website? Do you even know who's building it? Are they just going to outsource it to somebody on Upwork?
Well, that was certainly the suggestion in the article, that, you know, that they were just, you know, handing it to Upwork people.
The chosen list.
And there's nothing but downside to this, because now you're erasing goodwill with your agency owners who have spent years and years trying to promote the platform and grow it. So yeah, I the only thing I can think is maybe they're trying to get some market research with these inquiries, and that's the only thing that makes sense. I don't think it's going to last.
I was thinking about this last night and my knee-jerk reaction, and really Mr. Tavistock done me a favour actually by removing it, because I don't know why I got so hot under the collar really about it, because this is just my position, that the actual meat and potatoes of it really, it really doesn't mean much, basically. My main concern is it shows a leadership that live in a total bubble, that fundamentally aren't following business logic. And it's linked to other statements around like, well, it was built upon Jetpack and other bizarre statements from the leadership that shows that they've lost the plot. Basically, they're living in a bubble. So that's my main concern, and I think that's why my little comment got removed, because when you live in a bubble, you don't appreciate people that come with a pin to burst it, do you? So what do you reckon, Chris?
I think it's just a classic move of a company trying to get into expansion revenue through professional services. We see this playbook happen in a lot of software companies, and it's a way to just basically harvest more money off the same user base. I don't really see it as a big competitor. You know, 40% of the internet is really a big place. There's a lot of, in agency work, there's so many different niche markets that people can go into. So I don't really. Sorry to
interrupt, Chris. I just want to know what Automatic are doing with their 1,000 employees 6 years after they took over WooCommerce. I just want to know.
Well, they do mention e-commerce in their announcement.
I just want to know what they're doing 2.5 years after Gutenberg, and it's still not frigging finished. I just want to know what these 1,000 bloody people are doing at Automatic. Got any idea, Chris, what they actually are doing? Actually, Chris.
I don't, because I don't work there. But one of my favorite marketing philosophies around WordPress is all the power of WordPress without the hassle. WordPress is infinitely powerful, but it can be hard for the end user to execute. Hence the rise of agencies and freelancer nation. So when it comes to building an online store, or perhaps moving somebody off of Shopify to WooCommerce, they may want a done-for-you white glove service that Automatic provides, or some other WooCommerce focused shop or freelancer. So I think that's really why this is here, to help the company make more money and also help solve the complexity problem of WordPress being powerful but hard to use.
Well, and also, I mean, I know theme developers, for instance, who offer a done-for-you service setting up their themes, and we were having some discussion about this in the Genesis Slack yesterday, actually, and people were saying, well, it's interesting because it kind of gives you a price point. If you know, what they're doing is kind of like, we're going to pick one of these themes and set it up to look like the demo with your content in it. I mean, you know, $4,900 for that is nice work if you can get it. 'Cause, and there's going to be a lot of people who won't pay that for a simple website because that's out of their range. But if this is successful and gets a lot of uptake, it's going to indicate to the people who don't routinely charge that much to build a website that they probably could. And so it might actually bring some benefits to the freelancer community. I mean, I don't see any of my clients deciding they're going to rush over to WordPress.com because, first of all, if people are happy with you, that they don't necessarily want to change or go through a lot of trouble. And second, what are the advantages for them?
Yeah, sure. So, Spencer, can you understand why I got a little bit hot under the collar? But really, the fundamentals of the story are much about nothing, aren't they?
I mean, to me, this reveals a problem because, there's examples in life and literature and stuff of when somebody says, oh, I'm not bothered by that at all. And then they just drone on endlessly about it. Or, they talk about their ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, like in everyday conversation. It's like, you're obviously
This was
fixated.
mastered by Cicero and it's known as praeteritio. I won't mention such and such, and then go on to mention.
Well, we're experiencing sort of a similar drama in our politics today of people that do that kind of thing. But the point is, what this tells me, it tells me more about what's going on in Matt Mullenweg's mind and what they're up to than anything. Because if Gutenberg was working well, if Automatic had a direction, if the 1,000 employees were doing something under an auspice of a plan that was monetizable and so forth, why would they stick their thumb in the eyes of the people that have been supportive of them, even if it's not for sure that that's happening, for some sort of gray area, we're not really sure what this is going to do? And then in being asked about it, why would fearless leaders say something like, well, God forbid people get so confused that they go to Wix or Weebly or Squarespace, which is precisely the stuff that we've been droning on about for 2 years now of, there's 1,000 people. There's clearly things to be fixed. Why don't those things get fixed? So it's kind of revealing the emperor's wearing no clothes, this whole thing. At least that's how I see it. And I don't view it as a real threat because we've talked about this before. On a personal level, I find that the strategy of making money in WordPress is not racing to the bottom of building pretty websites. It's being a pain point solution provider on a personal level for a real business or even a real person, whether that in your market is $200 a day or $500 an hour. It really is up to you to decide. But it's not going to be because you do the thing that a page builder does on its own, by pressing a button anymore.
Right. Well, Heather, have you got any opinion about this one, Heather?
I think it's helpful in two ways. I mean, there's a lot of people that are coming from industry that have no idea how to get into WordPress and have budgets to just hit a button and be like, hey, Automatic is set up to accept money in ways that a lot of freelancers can't. So, and they have central billing. Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, so
give me the Benjamins. Give me the Benjamins.
Well, no, but they have a central billing and they're a known quantity. So a large corporate that has a marketing department and somebody's told please set up a website, they'll use your corporate credit card and just be like,
yes,
okay,
please go to the WP-Tonic website, listeners of yours. There's various ways that you can be charged on my site.
I'm just saying from the one side, it's a good option for them. And from the other side, it's good for the contractor or for the solopreneur, the small business, because now they have a price point that they can set. Because one of the hardest things as a contractor or a smaller business is to come up with that first price point. So now you can be like, okay, compared to Automatic's price of $4,900, you're getting a savings of 30% or 50% or whatever off of their price. So I'm a bargain based to them.
Yeah, like I said, it's not the meat, as we would say in London. It's not the meat and potatoes of this story. It's more the sign, like what Spencer, my alarm is. It's a clear view into the mind of our great leader. He that must be obeyed. He loves me. Every year I send him an invite to come on the show to be interviewed, and I just get crickets. So there we go. I don't think Matt Mahag has ever come.
Yes, well, it's up there with your invitation to GoDaddy to sponsor you.
Yeah, that's never going to happen either. So on to story 2. Oh, another juicy one. Hundreds of Google employees unionize, culminating years of activism. Yes. Well, Heather, what do you reckon about all these disgruntled Google employees then, Heather?
Oh, well, I mean, after the firing last year of the Google researcher, it's a long time coming. So for those of you that aren't aware, Alphabet workers have formed a union not for wage disputes, but for diversity and inclusion. Do you think
they're complaining they're not getting pheasant every day in the canteen? Do you think that's what's
no?
I think they're probably complaining that they get fired for doing the job they were hired to do.
Exactly. Yeah, they're getting they're upset that they're noticing that they're minorities, that they're women, that they're people of color, that that those people are not being able to speak up, that if they do speak up about unfair labor practices, they immediately get fired, or they are shunned enough to quit.
Lepers. They're lepers. They have the badge.
Yeah.
They've got the star put upon them, aren't they?
And that kind of thing happened to me in Silicon Valley as well. I mean, like, I have a strong enough personality and a good enough reputation to have overcome it, but it's really annoying, and not just annoying, it's disheartening for people to be up there. I mean, like, there was one point in time where I had harassment suits filed by another woman in my company daily because I was wearing the company's t-shirt. Like, I am a amply busted woman, and we had to wear t-shirts that were deep V for our company events. So like every time I had to wear this shirt, and I had to wear this shirt,
right,
you would file an HR complaint against me. And this is the kind of thing that you deal with in Silicon Valley as a woman. And this was a woman.
No, I'm so, listeners and viewers, you probably know me by now. If you continue to listen to this bloody show, I'm so tempted to come out with some English humour, but I'm not. I'm not going there. I'm keeping my mouth shut. On you go, Heather.
But I mean, think about it, like, as a manager, like as a person, like an executive in Silicon Valley, like me having to take 2 hours out of my day every, at least once a week to just sit there with HR and this woman, like, disrupting my work. Like, it's disheartening. And this is worse because, like, I mean, I was an executive. These people are not. So that's why they're forming these committees, because these people can't stand, like.
So where you go with this? Are you saying that they shouldn't unionize, or are you saying?
No, I'm saying that they should unionize.
Yeah, but they're probably going to complain about their lady executives.
What they're going to be doing is they're going to talk to their union rep, who that union rep is going to go to the HR. They're going to go to the committees. They're going to say this stuff has to stop. These people can't be harassed anymor. These people are in a toxic work environment. Right. These people, this shouldn't be happening.
Great. Chris, why is Silicon Valley in general so anti-union?
Honestly, don't know, because I built my business in the country. So I'm not like a Silicon Valley guy, but I will say, just an observation of power dynamics, that when there's an extreme polarity in terms of things like wealth, power, authority, the social movements, increase. And it's not like you have to choose. It's more like there has to be a resolution that comes together. This is the classic, if we look back through history, the conflict between capitalism and socialism. But it's not about making a decision. It's about moving forward in a better way. And that, to me, that's what this just looks like, is just another face of this age-old story of the people versus the power.
So, Spencer, any insights why, in general, Silicon Valley is anti-union?
Well, I think the problem is that the Silicon Valley has traditionally been a money, and I don't want to say that it's male dominated, but it's definitely borderline misogynistic tendencies, at least historically. So what you have is a scenario where, like Heather's scenario doesn't surprise me, because they have all the control. I mean, this is an example of how they have all the control over the personal lives of very talented and smart people, which is a reflection of the same kind of Hollywood Harvey Weinstein kind of a scenario, right? Like, you have nothing you can do about it. Tough luck for you. So what I see happening is some
it's like the story was you got to put up with it because that's the price of doing business in this industry, you know.
But what I'm suggesting is societies go in cycles, and I think what we're seeing in our own society right now across other places like politics is a swinging of the needle towards how far we're going to let powerful people, powerful money people, powerful corporations do things that we wouldn't tolerate from our friends or peers or neighbors. And I think that Silicon Valley has been able to get away with things because the greed factor of returning huge returns. But now we've seen that we've created Frankenstein monsters at the corporate level, at the personal level, and that bleeds into our lives through how they affect our politics or how they affect the politicians and so forth. So I would expect to see a backlash in favor of allowing, and then people doing it, more unionization, more organization to protect the workers themselves, more liberal worker-related mindset, where the things that I know personally, having interacted with Silicon Valley, is it's a fraternity. I mean, it's like you take Yoast and you pour 1,000 gallons of testosterone on top of it, and that's the experience. And the balls, so to speak, literally, of what people will say and do is shocking. And when you're a billionaire, you get to choose certain things because you have your thumb on everybody's, whatever, off switch. It's frightening. So
what do you reckon, John?
Google's the worst offender.
Yeah, what do you reckon, John?
So definitely, I was a union person for 17 years before I got into technology. And I can tell you that unionization does work. And what it's there for mostly is to prevent exploitation of workers, or if there's a grievance, if somebody is being unfairly targeted by the employer, in this case, Google. And the very prominent one very recently was the AI ethics woman, black woman yep. So in cases like this, I mean, Silicon Valley as it is, like, has a kind of a reputation for kind of disproportionately hiring people who fit a certain mold, like white male people, but it's not necessarily like that they're unionizing because, the pay is bad or something like that, but they just want to make sure that all the workers get a fair shake, and that the working conditions and that the terms of employment are agreeable. Why? It's not just technology, but it's like employers throughout time have always opposed unions because it gives workers a voice, and it's when employers have all the power, they can extract and exploit the workers as they need to. But when the workers come together in solidarity, or if they go on strike or something like that, then those employers can't, they have no choice but to listen to the workers. And that's why they've always opposed that, because they can't just exploit people at will. Silicon Valley up to now has not really touched that, because it's this whole technology thing is still kind of new, and it's still largely unregulated. So there's a lot of GDP that's coming out of Silicon Valley now. So that's why a lot of these issues have not really been dealt with, but they're now, Silicon Valley and this type of technology is kind of part of our life. So they're just a regular employer at this point. So
right. Yeah. I mean, it's John is right. First of all, all industries opposed unionization, often with great violence against, say, miners unionizing in the UP in Michigan and that kind of thing. But there's another thing that happened with technology, which was that, in the earliest days, you had a lot of women in technology dealing with the vacuum tubes and the tapes and the paper tapes and all of those things. And there was a deliberate decision, to we're going to make this instead of like thinking of the computers as like office machines that naturally your secretary would be operating. We want to make this like a professional thing. And by doing that, in a way, it kind of did themselves out of the possibility of unionization, in addition to conveniently getting rid of all the women after having them train men to replace them. And so, this is why it's like, oh, no, you don't have to pay overtime to programmers or, so it's partly that the industry is being bitten in the foot by decisions made itself.
Yeah. So, Brian, is there a kind of history of anti-trade unionism in technology? I was thinking of back to Henry Ford, that paid his workers a substantially higher wage. I think it was $4 a day, but he was an extreme anti-unionist at his heart, And is there is it also linked to this libertarian kind of strain of philosophy in Silicon Valley, Brian?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't follow much of a lot of the stuff that you guys are talking about right now. I mean, what I do know is that, I'm a pacifist at heart. I think a lot of people are starting to protest for the sake of protesting and things like that. But I'm also on the other side of it where, I believe in equality and all of that. So outside of that, I don't spend much time at all ever inside of Silicon Valley. That might change with the new venture. So to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure I have much more to add.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. The voice of reason. I can understand, Brian. So I think it's time for us to go for our break. We'll be back in a few moments. We're coming back. Brian, wisely, do you want to get involved with the last topic? I totally understand. That's why he has been a successful business person. So there we go. So on to story 3, which I changed, I might add. I changed it to Liquid Web requires event calendar, WordPress plugin from the agency Modern Tribe. Blah, blah. So John, what did you reckon of this one, John?
Hey, hosting companies are, hey, Brian knows, hosting companies acquire a lot of these WordPress products. And I think it's a good deal for the events calendar. They have a home there. I guess it's kind of an acqui-hire from what I understand. So
they said they're taking the whole team is
that's great.
Moving over.
I mean, hey, I'm good with that. If you spend a lot of time building up a product and you can do a successful exit, then, more power to you. So,
So Brian, do you think it was the revenue, the plugin, plus you're buying a good team that you can add to the iTheme crowd that you brought in as well, so you get a good web development platform? Is this the business logic behind this a bit, do you reckon, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, having gone through it ourselves with the Studio Press acquisition, Chris, love your hat, by the way. Quick plug for WP Engine. I mean, that's typically what we're doing, right? Like everybody kind of was out on the same playing field years ago. Some people went ahead, built bigger companies, hosting companies in particular. GoDaddy is another example of people who, hey, I could do more than just the one thing I set out to do. In other words, now we can have a theme company as part of our quote platform or digital experience. And what I find fascinating is that other than like the few diehard WordPress people and those who are involved, this kind of thing has become more white noise in the ecosystem as a whole. Even when StudioPress was acquired, I was like, oh, it's going to be on WP Tavern and the whole community is going to be talking about it. It was like crickets, like 10 comments. And I was like, oh, so it's like, you know, other than the people who are involved, it's just yet another story that doesn't mean much. It's just sort of not dog eat dog.
We talked about it.
Well, we talked about it some, but I mean, like in my mind,
I'm starting to cry now, Brian. You're making me feel I'm not relevant.
No, I just in my mind.
I've been so nice to you, Brian. I've been so nice to you.
I envision World Series parade type things,
yes,
but it never
don't
happened.
Let Jonathan wind you up.
Yeah, so you know, it's just yet another thing. Not surprising. Obviously, Liquid Web / iThemes are making several moves to sort of bolster its thing, maybe out of necessity, just maybe out of, you know, trying to expand the market. And you know, it is what it is. It's kind of just a somewhat non-event. No pun intended, sort of thing.
I know Spencer likes to talk about how, you know, because hosting is such a commodity,
it's irrelevant.
all the hosting companies need to like do something else to distinguish themselves. I mean, I hadn't seen that
finished,
coming.
but we need to build these Lego parts and build this modularization.
Your American accent.
Sorry, I'm sorry, Spencer. I just had to.
I'm going to do a good Jonathan when my turn comes.
All right. Oh, Chris, what do you reckon about this?
I think it's a really good move. I know Shane from Events Calendar, one of the founders. I think it's awesome. I've always been amazed how big that plugin is. 800,000 installs. A couple points of interest. One of the things that I like about Liquid Web, based on their track record with iThemes, Restrict Content Pro, and others, they seem to like keep the teams alive and the product alive and keep them kind of in their own area where they can do their thing. So it doesn't, these companies are not losing momentum doing what they do, which is really cool. Number two is that the event space with the pandemic and everything is really interesting to me to see how that adapts and evolves. So there's a lot of room for innovation here right now, specifically with that focus of a plugin. And yeah, I'm just happy for them. I think it's a good thing, and hosting companies can do it well. Like Brian mentioned, WP Engine, and you know, Genesis continues to improve and advance, and it can be a good thing.
They have the money to invest in development. Now, I didn't get the impression that Modern Tribe as a company was exactly hurting, but you know, it's also, they had always done some level of consulting work in addition to the plugin, and it sounds like that's what the remaining people want to focus on more. But it's hard to tell. I mean, my first thought really, other than wait, didn't see that coming, was, you know, well, what is Modern Tribe going to actually do? But they seem to have something in mind.
Probably
they're kind of an enterprise service offering. So, you know, part of that success story there, I think, is the two ships of plugin development and professional services.
Yes, I do think it's kind of interesting to notice, you know, they're choosing the professional services over the plugin development, where you hear so many people say, oh, yes, of course, everybody wants to like build a product and have it. Well, you know, actually, everybody doesn't.
No, there's many ways of doing things. Yes, Heather, was you going to say something? No, she wasn't. All right. So, Spencer, I think I'll leave the last word with you. So what do you reckon about this one?
Lego blocks and such. What I think I read in this is that I was surprised. I really didn't know, but Modern Tribe was a very large organization, right? 124 people. That's a large company. So I would venture to guess that if you had a large company and you were doing well in the space of doing the high-end consultancy and the other kind of professional services, as well as whatever new plugins and things you could create, why not liquidate, no pun intended, the plugin that is the most likely to get a cash out, remove some of the obligation of those other 50 employees in favor of being cash rich, and carry on, which it sounds like they're doing. So this actually is contrary to many of those other examples where we see like a small company that's just got some bigger foot on its head and they'll never escape, so they get out, or some other product that is reaching the end of its life. This is one where it seems like Liquid Web is doing extremely well, and they're just spinning off one of their divisions to another company that wants to give them a lot of cash for it in exchange for the freedom to do more stuff.
All right, I think
You
so.
know, again, but I go with Brian on this. It's sort of like a chirp, like.
Well, it wasn't. I think.
Well, we have had so many acquisitions recently that it is becoming like less newsworthy. It's like, oh, it's that. So that's this week's acquisition.
Well, it is this week. This week in WordPress. So there we go. It happened this week. So that's why it's one of the stories. So on to the next.
I was going to say one thing. I was going to say, I wish the Tavern would use its own metrics sometimes for deciding what stories to publish, because, like, in all fairness, I realize they're not profit motive based so much, but when you get certain articles and they explode, and you get articles like this, which are just an advertorial for like a PR release, wouldn't it make sense to stop making these posts and just have a section of like recent events that people can look to? But otherwise, why publish stuff where it gets, one comment?
Well, when you're spending all your time moderating.
That's right. God forbid we publish
moderating.
anything that doesn't have a clickbait headline,
Yeah.
and won't create more drama.
Yeah,
I mean,
but when you're spending all your time moderating the comments, you haven't got time to write articles, have you?
Justin published his article about how to make potato soup, which I was reading the other day on his Facebook page. That would be more interesting than Liquid Web acquiring an events calendar.
There we go.
Well, not to me. I use events calendar a lot.
But listeners and viewers, when you're the founder of the show, you've got to have broad shoulders, and but they're not going to complain about my shirt being too open, are they? So there we go. On to the next story. The rise and fall in Invision. You like this one, Sally? What was this one about?
Well, it struck me a bit because I'm one of those people who, like, I sort of signed up for Invision because it seemed intriguing, and I have yet to really settle on a good prototyping tool that I use, like, instead of other things. And it seemed pretty cool, and it was like, well, I hadn't been that aware that it was falling, but they've got this little chart here saying, hey, if you look at adoption of these tools, Invision was, pretty trendy in 2017 when it came out, and there are fewer and fewer people using it. And Sketch, skyrocketed and has dropped off a little bit. And the thing that's been taking off has been Figma. So, it is kind of like, well, okay, we had a bunch of things launch at about the same time. And, why is it that somebody picked A and not B? And there is so it's like, yeah, well, that's kind of, interesting, is because there is and isn't space for more and more competitors. We've seen lots of stories of people who came into a crowded market and nevertheless did brilliantly. And other people who didn't, and what's
I think that's what makes business interesting. But I think Heather's probably got some insights with
Heather
online
knows more
services. Why some
knows more about business than me.
They establish themselves and get dominance of their sectors. Others kind of zoom and then they decline, don't they, a bit? So
yeah, I mean, business is cyclical. So I mean, you have to pay attention to what your customers want, but you also have to pay attention to what the market demands. So if Invision is determining it is developing for what they think the market needs right now, then they're behind. They need to be developing for what the market needs, like a year or 2 years down the road. And it looks like the things that they're developing are behind what people want. However, if their customer base is solid, if their revenue is solid, then they don't need to be whiz bang with all of the things that they're putting out. They can just take some time to make sure that all of the mistakes that they made when they first came out, that they can get rid of all that tech debt now, keep their existing customer base happy, fix any problems that they've got, and then work towards working on the highest priority items from their corporate customers, because that's who they really have. They're not focusing on the B2C right now. They're focusing on the B2B customers that they've got, and they have quite a few of them. So, I mean, they're not the, so as far as a company that's been around for a bit, I think that they are, I mean, and based on the Glassdoor things, if you look at any company at this phase of their life, you'll see the startup people that were there from the beginning getting all disgruntled as they're bringing on more corporate people to move them forward. So this is like the high school phase of a company. You're moving, you're getting the people that are in their adolescence kicked out as you're bringing in the people that are focused on college. So yeah, I think it's actually a good thing for Invision.
Oh, well, there you go. What do you reckon, Brian?
So as a
And
designer,
I didn't choose this story, so if you don't, it was all Sally's fault.
That's right.
Brian.
You can just blame me. I mean,
no.
I get their blog posts in the mail every week. They are blogging up a storm. You would never know from anything they wrote that there might be any issues.
Yeah, no, I won't plead the fifth on this one. As a designer and somebody who loves designing and prototyping, I was fascinated by the chart that I think Sally you referenced, where kind of it was like everybody was kind of going like this, and then all of a sudden Figma goes up like that. And I'm one of the reasons why Figma did that. I adopted Figma after sort of stiff arming. I was a Photoshop guy, and then I was like, Invision, Sketch didn't do anything for me. And then our team started talking about Figma, and I jumped into it, and I won't touch anything else. And I don't even know if there's a reason why, other than it just works and I can do it and it makes sense.
Well, and it's cross-platform because like some of us are Windows users, so Sketch was never an option.
Yeah. And I'll tell you this though, like what it does is it reminds me of where we sat at StudioPress for so long, where we were like the shiz. We were the Invision in the, for many years, and there was some to little no competition, and it was easy to just sort of feel like we can just coast and do our thing. We're always going to be, and we started kind of diversifying what we were doing at Copyblogger at that point with hosting and Copyblogger and education and StudioPress. And to be perfectly honest, the reason we ultimately sold was because we had gotten to a point where we almost felt lapped, where there was Elementor and the page builders and those types of things. And we were kind of like, oh, we were just comfortable. And all of a sudden we're no longer out in front. And do we want to try to get back out in front, or is it time, and for it to get back out in front? Brian Clark and I decided ultimately it was, and it was 10 or 12 years in at that point. We were kind of just toast. And so we just said, hey, let's see if there's somebody out there. WP Engine obviously came in, and we were like, hey, they could take it back out in front. We don't have the desire to anymore. And so we went ahead and sold.
All right. Thanks for that insight. I appreciate that. So what do you reckon, Chris? What do you reckon? Got any thoughts about this one?
All businesses kind of have a shelf life, and so this thing happens. I mean, I was a big Invision user in our agency days, but there's trends. There's things that happen like the low code, no code movement, people designing more and more, like even in WordPress itself, there's like behavior change that's happening, and a disruptor can come in like Figma, and that's what happened. So to me, it's pretty straightforward. Just a new competitor, new kid on the block, moving faster, and that's it.
Yeah, I can see it. What do you reckon, John?
Yeah, I mean, I was surprised that Invision's market share had fallen that much.
Yeah.
I knew that Figma was, everybody talks about it. Everybody seems to be using it.
I'm downloading it as we speak.
I just didn't realize that Invision had dropped that bad. So that's all.
Oh, right. Any thoughts, Spencer? Or shall I go on to the next one? Oh, there.
Miro crushed them. They didn't keep up. Story over.
End of story. All right, on to the next one. All right, block system will create more commercial opportunities for WordPress theme authors. What do you reckon, John? What do you reckon about this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would, there's a lot of people in this comment section that are kind of talking about this, and essentially all web design is like taking a box and putting like other smaller boxes in it. And ultimately the block system, that's what it's going to be when it's, when it's done, and it's made great strides. And I think eventually it will replace some of these page builders. I don't think that it's 100% there for like everybody yet. I still think there's a little space where people are still going to be using page builders, but it has to be comparable. Full site editing, it has to be comparable to stuff like Elementor and things like that. But if they could make it easier than that, like less complicated, and be able to have people position elements exactly where they want to, as somebody in the comments section here was alluding to, I think the sky's the limit. And
so what do you reckon, Brian? We seem to be in a kind of twilight area here. Gutenberg isn't quite finished, but it's just coming, and then we've got these page builders, haven't we? But when Gutenberg is kind of there, whatever there means, does it really mean the end of all these page builders, Brian?
I don't know what it means regarding the page builders, but I'm going to show you this right here. This is what happens when you spend 12 years in the WordPress theme space. And my reaction to all of this now is more power to everybody and the community and the young kids and companies who have the stamina to try to keep up with all of the changes, with all of the user base. And like, I remember days when we have to style a calendar widget in a header just because people would do it. And it was like, when it kind of got to that point, I'm like, okay. And personally, like the minimalist in me just kind of wants to distance myself from trying to come up with a system that supports all of the possibilities with libraries and patterns and this, that, and then other things. So I'm going to sit back in my recliner and watch the community do what it's going to do with this new system, and I'm not going to be a part of that.
Oh, I don't think you're going to be doing that, not with Agent Engine. But I think you're deluding yourself there, Brian.
No, it's a completely different thing.
Get comfortable in the rocking chair. Well, I noticed they mentioned the Studio Press collections with the Genesis blocks, but having just been through an experience where I attempted to subcontract something to my husband, and he spent the entire job whining about how it would have been easier to do this with Avada, and is right in some ways. Much as I detest Avada, I'm like, please, could you at least use Elementor and not Avada if you want to do something like that? Because the complaints you have are valid complaints, but it's true that we need some more comprehensive way of doing this. Lots of people are addressing it, and there are theme companies that have even said, hey, you can use this layout or this layout or this layout, and you can choose whether you want that as Elementor or Beaver Builder or Gutenberg. But it's a lot to keep up with, and it's unsettled, and the fact that there is not good standardization yet, which was part of the selling point for Gutenberg, that if it's in core, there's going to be an established way to do it.
Well, the other factor is the YouTube influencers, like it was Div and then Elementor. I noticed a few of them have now been plugging Oxygen, doing tutorials on that. I think, and they seem to get all these people, and I think, my God, they can't actually be doing any commercial work because they've got the time to mental out all these different.
Well, they're probably getting beautiful kickbacks from these people. So.
Oh well, good luck to them. That's capitalism, isn't it?
Right.
If you want
So you don't-
anybody,
you don't-
anybody
you don't
wants
need
to,
to do what? You
if
don't need
anybody
do
wants to
client
send any
work.
kickbacks to me, please post them to. So there we go. What do you reckon, Chris? What you're unlike Brian that's in the rocking chair now. You're one of these poor souls, but you seem to be keeping your hair. I'm not sure about your eyesight, but your hair seems to be doing all right. How are you coping with having to to work?
I'm a big block bull. I love them. And I'm seeing more and more people in our user base come off page builders to be like, I just want simple. I just want to keep it all. I don't want that extra layer. What I'm seeing is companies like Cadence who have the Cadence theme. They have these block libraries. They've got
They have
starter
a really
sites.
good block library.
If you're looking for an example of a company doing it well, check out Cadence. They're really innovating, and they're I don't know what their numbers are today, but they launched their free version of their theme on the WordPress repository a month or so ago. And last time I looked, it was like at 20 or 30,000 installs and just taking off like a rocket. But they're a company that are doing it well and really kind of forging ahead with the block way of doing things, while also being a theme company, while also integrating with being opinionated on design with their integrations with tools like WooCommerce or Lifter or whatever.
Yes. What do you reckon, Spencer?
The thing that I was sort of excited about last week before, is I've started working with the team, the guy who's running the new Gutenberg hub, because I think it was a couple weeks ago when we were talking about that. And what I like about it is that individual and his group are taking over the things that are not fixed in Gutenberg and making them work through the plugin. However, early days, just like John mentioned, it is still true. And what they said in the article, like, it's easier now because you could drag and place something that at least gets you close to what you want. But then when you need to tweak it 2 pixels down and to the left, there's no tool or capacity. So now you have to go right back to the beginning, go, do not pass a go, do not collect $200. And you have to start CSS tweaking a Gutenberg block, which is sort of like, okay, Brian, let's pull the rest of our hair out. It's like, why did I start? Now, on the other hand, I'm really concerned over Sally and her husband, because I'm wondering who's going to get custody of the cats when the divorce happens.
It's in our prenup.
Over.
Cats are
Oh,
mine.
I've got to read the prenup review.
I mean,
We both have businesses. Of course we have a
Kelly
prenup.
Ann and George Conway of, like, you say do something, he goes Avada. I think to myself, what is going on in your household that your husband is thinking to use Avada in 2020? I mean, maybe he should pull out, the X theme or something like that.
I think he used that one before. Yes. Well, I mean, the thing is, he builds websites like not as the main thing he does. So it's like, oh yeah, well, let's see. The last time I did any work on a website was about 2 years ago, and then now. So he's not keeping up with it, and it is kind of like, yeah, if you weren't my husband, I'd have hired somebody else for this, because I would have got less complaining and more familiarity.
Well, heaven knows how to.
That's shocking.
Manage their husband.
Heather knows how to be in a relationship, which I'm not sure I do.
How do you know? There we go. There you go.
Because she read my book.
That's right. That's right. There is a very good demonstration of real operation as a partnership in that.
Oh well, I'll have to get a copy. I'm intrigued there. The last person that tried to do that with me, they soon gave up. So there we go. Right. So, right. I think we won't go for the other story. Go, Daddy. So let's go on to our recommendation of the week. My one is Manage Notification Emails. It's a free plugin. Unfortunately, WordPress sends a load of notifications, and when you've got a learning management system or WooCommerce, it has a tendency to want to send even more. This little plugin allows you to switch off, customize the notifications, which if you are the admin of the site, that blessed WordPress wants to keep sending you. So it does the job out the can and does it well. So John, have you got anything you want to recommend? And please put all your recommendations into chat. It really helps me. John,
my recommendation this week, this is a past interview with Jamar Ramos on an SEO show that is hosted by, I'm sure I'm going to say his name wrong, but Daniel Chung. But I'm going to link that up. I found it very intriguing and I encourage you to check it out.
All right, I'll have to listen to that. Brian, have you got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
Not specific to WordPress, but I'm trying to write more. And so I use Grammarly to do all of my writing, whether it's tutorial writing, whether it's email writing, whether it's marketing copy. On some level, product producer, people who create products and founders and all that kind of stuff need to write in some capacity. So if you're going to do it, it has helped me look and sound much smarter than I am.
You're pretty smart, Brian. So there we go. Chris. We might have no hair though, but there we go. Chris,
I'll just double down on what I mentioned earlier, which is to check out the Cadence theme. If you haven't tried it out yet, they have a great free version. Check that out.
They are coming on the podcast in February for interview. Should be interesting chat with them from the great state of Montana. So Heather, let's go for Spencer. Spencer, have you got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers?
I do. It's called mailtrap.io. Well, it's at mailtrap.io. And what it solves is the problem of, let's say you're setting up a site, and even if it's a live site, you want to test out what emails go out for your marketing automation, your transactional stuff. Oftentimes that's a problem because you have to deal with like the possibility that a user who is trying to get something, you'd have to use a program like Switch2 or something. What this does is it sets up a jar or a bumblebee net around, butterfly net around the site with a proxy email. So it catches all the outgoing email and displays them in a proxy email box, which essentially lets you see what the website is doing. So, for your WooCommerce or your marketing automation follow-up. I found it very handy, and it's free for up to 500 emails a month, which is more than enough for any normal website. So something that to me was like a no-brainer, actually, and a good business model.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I don't know where we get these from. I'm gonna have to look at that. Oh, wow, Heather, got anything you want to recommend to the listeners and viewers? And I promise my phone won't interrupt you.
Yeah, no, it's so I've been doing a lot with my nonprofit lately, and GiveWP GiveWP has been helpful. It's really quick and easy to connect Stripe and PayPal and others for donations. So if you're not a WordPress aficionado, and a lot of nonprofits aren't, I would recommend that plugin for nonprofits.
Yeah, it's
I would certainly recommend it over the types of solutions most nonprofits use.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good with forms and everything, but I mean, I was just looking for something quick and dirty, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about this one. You can set up recurring subscriptions and recurring donations and all sorts of things. So it's really easy.
And Sally, got anything you want to recommend?
Yes, I want to recommend Heather's book, Birth of a Unicorn. It's now available on Kindle Unlimited. So if you are a member of that, you can even read it for free, although I'm in favor of supporting Heather as an author. It talks about her adventurous business, early business life, and making some decisions about what matters as you are developing yourself. And it even has cats.
Thank you for the plug.
Oh, cats. Oh, dear. Right. Thank you, panel. Listeners and viewers, obviously, I was in two minds to do this, but and I was going to do this at the beginning of the show, but for respect to my panel, I thought it was best to do it at the end of the show. And I want to make clear these are my own personal views. They are not the panel's views. I felt that I would be cowardly of me not to remark of what's happened in our great country this week. I became an American citizen 7 years ago, and I swore oath to defend the Constitution of this country. And as I get older, when I was a young man, sometimes I used to promise things and I didn't always keep my promises. As I get older, I realise that it's really quite important. And one of the few things that you're going to take with you when you die is, was you a person that kept your word as an individual? So I feel that as an American citizen, I should remark what happened this week. I think our president is a traitor. I think his family are traitors. I think some of the Senate are traitors. They have broken their oath of office. They are a disgrace to this country. Unfortunately, I don't think anything is going to happen to them where Lady Democracy should take up the shield and sword of justice and go into battle and hammer these people and give them a fair trial, which they wouldn't give to the likes of me. But they are traitors to their core. And they deserve to be the outcome of all traitors, to be given a fair trial and suffer the consequence of their treachery. I just thought I would say that to you, listeners and viewers. I'll see you next week with another great roundtable show and a great panel. I'll see you soon, folks. Bye.
Bye.